Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morse, the review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the new Wage War album entitled Pressure. I told y'all I was gonna get to it. By God, I'm gonna get to it. This is the third studio-length album by the Florida metalcore band Wage War, formed in 2010, signed to Fearless Records. Stepping into this record, my expectations were fairly low considering I had not been a big fan of their previous two albums. They both felt kind of derivative, kind of diluted, a bit like they were ripping off other contemporary bands. Ripping off in the sense that they're not necessarily blatantly plagiarizing what they're doing. It's just they're implementing the same things that other bands better than them do, just in a more desaturated format. Mixing in things like alternative metal, mixing in things like hardcore punk and melodic hardcore into a fairly tight-knit style. But despite the fact that they were implementing these styles, none of their projects up until this point felt much more than kind of uninspired and like they couldn't really fit into any square genre and weren't really trying to find their own defined style. Unfortunately, Pressure kinda like that. I'll go as far as to say this is my favorite Wage War project up until this point, but through these 12 tracks, it's not the most enjoyable 41 minutes I've had. Positive things? There are the occasional grooving riff, the occasional djent-type scratchy riff that sounds interesting. There's occasionally a chorus that hits kind of hard. There's occasionally a lyric that's decent. There's occasionally a layered hard vocal that just sounds really unclean and raw. There's occasionally a good melody. But I think the key point in all of these things I'm saying is occasionally. The first four tracks are an amazing indication of what you're going to get. Who I Am, Prison, Grave, and Ghost. Short tracks that try to be blistering, with extremely overblown choruses, extremely run-of-the-mill and one-dimensional riff work and drum work in the verses, some very, very uninspired, heavy vocals, and when the choruses do try to soar on this record, they don't soar in a way that brings up the instrumentation in any way. It sounds just as kind of low-key on the choruses from an instrumental point of view. Low-key in the sense that it is a metalcore song, but it is not really that heavy of a metalcore song. One of my major issues with this record is that they can't find a style. They can't define themselves. They can't flesh themselves out. Metalcore is a very big umbrella term. It's a wide spectrum. There are bands on either side of the spectrum. You got the extremely, extremely dissonant and heavy metalcore like Converge and Hatebreed and Code Orange and Knocked Loose. And then on the other side, you have some of the more soaring bands. You got your Bullet for My Valentines. You have your Killswitch Engages. To some lesser degree, As I Lay Dying. And you have things that are just in the middle that are very experimental and noisy. But it just seems like Wage War is too scared to go so heavy that they go brutal and lose their accessibility. They just lose the meaning altogether. Leaving the verses sounding extremely tedious and mundane and the choruses feeling like they're just not doing enough. Not only is the songwriting from a playing standpoint fairly basic, but it's also fairly basic from a lyrical point of view. It's like they just had a list of every single cliche and every single trope in metalcore and scene from the 2000s and just hit every single dot, made sure to cross their T's and dot their I's, and just they hit every mark when it comes to just being extremely predictable and at times borderline cringy. Combine this with drums that seem like they're shackled and afraid to turn the dial up. Combine this with bass work that just gets drowned out. Combine this with a rhythm guitar that doesn't really do much in the way of melodies or harmonization in a way that's anything interesting. And it just leaves me scratching my head, begging for this record to do anything. Just sitting around, waiting for this record to do something that is interesting. It's not terrible, it's decent, it has decent djent tones, but those decent djent tones just sound like contemporary djent. Not to mention there's times that the clean vocals sound like Sam Carter on the choruses. My biggest issue with Wage War continues to be the fact they feel like they're performing what other people are performing to just a lesser level. Leaving all of the songwriting sounding quite weak, leaving all of the lyricism sounding very weak, and everything else just ends up being up in the air. So if you like metalcore, check it out, you might get more out of it than me. If you like accessible metalcore that's not too invasive or abrasive, you might get more out of this than me. I just personally prefer metalcore to have a little bit more depth and dimension than this record clearly doesn't really have. That's not to discredit talent levels at all. They obviously are able to play what they do fairly decently. They just play it in a way that's very non-evasive. And like I said, there are some decent ideas here or there scattered around, but they get overshadowed by the bad very quickly. Or not necessarily even the bad, just the mundane. I'm gonna be giving this record a 6 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Please stay for the end screen. I'll link some videos that you might be interested in. Have you heard this new Wage War record, Pressure? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I would love to discuss the record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. It helped me out a lot. Subscribe to join the review family today. I'd love to have you here. And smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. My name is Jay Morse, the review guy. You know who it is. And I'm signing off saying farewell.